Hello, everyone. My name is Colossian, and I'm going to talk about the new Harry Potter movie. So, the way we're going to do this is I'm going to have a spoiler free section up front, then I'm going to throw up a spoiler alert, and then I'm really going to get into the meat and potatoes of the thing. So, I really like the Harry Potter movies. I actually like the first few more than the rest of them. I really like, particularly, Sorcerer's Stone. It's actually my favorite one. Then Chamber of Secrets. Then I really can't be bothered to list all of them in order. I feel like as they went on, they kind of started blending together. Like, I have a hard time keeping Half-Blood Prince and Order of the Phoenix straight in my head because they're really similar. I read the books, but I'm not one of those diehard fans who's like, oh, I can't believe they didn't, include the 15th Quidditch match of the season and what Tonks had for breakfast. It was vital to the story. No, I'm not one of those guys. I fully understand that when you're making a movie, you gotta cut stuff. Especially if especially as the books get really, really long. Then we get the first Fantastic Beasts movie, which I thought was alright. I mean, it wasn't great. I wasn't blown away. It was just kind of, yeah, alright. I kind of hoped there would be more, Fantastic Beasts in the first Fantastic Beasts movie. Like, the whole thing is just Newt and his muggle buddy going on safari or getting all his animals back. But they spent a lot of time with Credence, setting up Credence, because the movie is not about Newt. The series is clearly not actually about the Fantastic Beasts or Newt, or any of Newt's supporting cast. It's about Credence. Which brings us to the movie, which is called Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, which does not feature Fantastic Beasts, nor does it actually tell you what Grindelwald's crimes are, because obviously you read his Pottermore page, right? Like, who walks into a Harry Potter movie without an encyclopedic knowledge of everything J.K. Rowling has ever scribbled on a napkin? There are basically no Fantastic Beasts in this movie. There's a bit at the beginning when we're in Newt's house to introduce us to Newt's house and Newt's assistant, who is never seen again after the first, 15 minutes of the movie because she's not important. Although I'd be willing to bet she's actually going to be super important and relevant in 2 movies from now, because that's how we make movies now. It's not about telling a story within a 90-minute to 2-hour period. It's about setting up the next, 7 movies, because that's how everyone thinks Marvel did it, even though that's not how Marvel did it. And that's how they did it in Ultron, and nobody liked it when they did it in Ultron. But anyway, I feel like I should just go over the plots of the movie. Yes, plural, because this movie is 3 mini-movies, I don't want to say tied together, more like just playing at the same time. And they all happen to converge at the very end. But that's spoiler territory. So Grindelwald is in prison after the events of the last movie, but he spends all of about 5 minutes there because he's immediately broken out. And then it's 3 months later, and Newt wants to have his travel privileges reinstated because he was banned from leaving the country after the first movie. And the Ministry goes, hey, if you're willing to kill Credence, who is not dead, then we'll let you do it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to go kill a kid. And they're like, all right, well, fine, piss off. And he comes across his brother Theseus. He's like, dude, work with us. We want you to help us kill this kid. And he's like, no. And he comes across Lita Lestrange. Get used to hearing everyone's last name from the original movies again, because it's a prequel, and that's how we do things. Lita and Newt went to Hogwarts together, and Lita's purpose in this movie is to be the fake-out love interest, I think. She's engaged to Theseus, but she has a thing for Newt, and she's there in the Ministry to be like, hi, Newt. And that's really about it. Lita doesn't actually do anything in this movie. which is another phrase you should get used to hearing. And then Newt is walking home, and he's summoned by Dumbledore, and Dumbledore's like, "Hey, Newt, listen, would you mind going to Paris and fetching Credence for me?" And Newt's like, "No, I'm not doing this. Why does everyone want me in this movie?" And then Newt goes home, and we have a scene in the basement of him and his assistant taking care of the Fantastic Beasts. And then once Newt leaves the basement, the assistant's never seen again. And we find out that Jacob and Queenie are in Newt's house. And Newt's like, "Jacob, I thought they wiped your memory." And Jacob's like, "Ha, nope." And they're like, "Oh, good." Then we find out that Queenie has been enchanting Jacob for the last few months to make him want to get married, which no one really brings up. And they try and pin Jacob as being the unreasonable asshole here, as opposed to the guy who's been drugged by his girlfriend for 3 months. But there's actually precedent in Harry Potter for people getting lots of love potions and stuff. Fred and George sell it to teenagers. I think Hermione buys some. It's really bizarre. So Queenie storms off and is like, "Well, fine, I'm gonna go see my sister." And she pisses off to Paris, and Jacob's all sad because his girlfriend left after drugging him for 3 months. And then Newt's like, wait, hold on. Tina is in Paris? And Jacob's like, yeah. And Newt's like, "Well, shit. Forget saving the world. I gotta go get laid." And so they go off to Paris. And that is the beginning of the Newt plot. Then we have the Credence plot, where he is working in a circus in Paris, and he busts out his girlfriend, Credence's girlfriend, not Newt's girlfriend. So they bust out of the circus, and the circus master is like, "Time to go," and he just leaves, and we never see him again. Credence's girlfriend, I'm going to have to get into a little bit with spoiler territory, but it's dumb. It's really, really dumb. So Credence's plotline is all about finding out about his birth family, which is also Tina's plotline, because Credence may or may not be the last line of this super important wizard family bloodline, which is super important because you get to track his family tree on Pottermore. They don't really explain why it's important or why anyone should actually care. It's not like there's an inheritance. It's not like there's a massive castle off in, southern France or anything. That could be interesting, and that could be, relatable. So occasionally the movie remembers that Grindelwald is actually the titular character of the movie, and cuts back to him, usually just talking to his henchmen or talking to Queenie. And they're just there. You could forget that Queenie is in this movie for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, and then she's on screen. It's like, oh shit, I forgot she was in this movie. Johnny Depp is just doing his standard Johnny Depp whisper acting, and I don't understand why. Why did Rowling insist so heavily against all the controversy that Grindelwald had to be Johnny Depp, that there was no one else it could possibly be? It was Johnny Depp, and had to be Johnny Depp. So the movie kind of cuts back between these various plot lines. Newt's just kind of switches halfway through. It's first he's trying to find Tina. Then he finds Tina. Then he's like, well, shit, I gotta be in the rest of the movie. I don't know, I guess I'll find Credence too. Dumbledore told me to, and that's important to me now, as opposed to, earlier. We also get a scene with the Ministry talking to Dumbledore. It's like, "Hey, Dumbledore, go kill Grindelwald." And he's like, "No, I'm not gonna do it." And they're like, "Why not?" And he's like, "Queer baiting." And they're like, "Oh, well, alright, fair enough. Just stay in Hogwarts." And Lita has a 10-minute flashback in the middle of this to show that she knew Newt at Hogwarts, which we already knew. And to show that she liked Newt, I guess, but she's already engaged, and Newt already has his plot-ordained girlfriend. So I don't understand why that was in the movie. And that's where I'm going to cut it off for this portion of the review. Because after that, we start really getting into spoiler territory. So overall, I think Rowling is a much better novelist than she is a screenwriter. There's a lot of diversions and stuff, just a bunch of extraneous stuff that has no purpose being in the movie. And so many characters, so many people that you have to remember that just don't matter. But that works in a 1,000-page novel. It doesn't work in a 200 to 300-page screenplay. And you also have to throw in some CG monsters every now and again to, prevent the kids from getting bored and walking out of the theater. If you are like an ultra diehard Harry Potter fan and you need to know everything that ever happened in the entire Wizarding World, then you have already seen this movie because it's been out for more than 4 hours. But if you're more of a casual fan, then don't bother. It's the really bad world building as plot style of story making that, again, everyone thinks Marvel does, but Marvel doesn't do. Because Marvel makes good movies first, and they make connected movies second. This entire movie, I like to call it the middle movie, because it's like Pirates 2. Nobody watches the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie without immediately watching the third one, because it exists only to sell you future movies. This entire movie is just an ad for Fantastic Beasts 3 through 5. That's the entire purpose of this movie, is to reassure Warner Brothers that there will be more Harry Potter going forward, even if it has basically nothing to do with the original characters who made Harry Potter popular. And now we have the spoiler alert. If you are watching from here on, then you are okay with the spoilers. But I feel like I totally sold this movie for you, right? Like, if you weren't sure, you watched this and you were like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see Fantastic Beasts. So, here's the last spoiler alert. And here we go. Oh my god, where do I begin? Let's start at the beginning. So, I was cagey about who Credence's girlfriend is. It's Nagini. Yes, Voldemort's pet snake. That was also Horcrux. That was also the snake Harry freed from the zoo in the first movie. She was a Korean woman the whole time. That way, Rowling gets to go onto Twitter and be like, see, I was totally progressive and inclusive in my books the entire time. And I totally sat down in that coffee shop in Scotland, I think, and wrote out Nagini's whole backstory. It's like, oh yes, this snake that Harry frees from the zoo and sends him after Dudley, that is totally a piece of Voldemort's soul and is actually a Korean woman. Because otherwise you'd have to admit it's a retcon to cover Rowling's own ass. Although calling Nagini a character would be disingenuous, she could actually just be a sack of potatoes labeled property of Tom Riddle for all the good she does in the movie. I'm so glad that Rowling wrote an Asian woman who is quiet, submissive, does nothing on her own accord, has basically no agency, and just follows around her man until the literal last minute of the movie. I'm not sure she actually has any lines. I can't remember a damn word she said. And if you're wondering how she turns into, Voldemort's pet snake, it's because she's from a special group of people who are cursed to one day turn into snakes, and they will never shapeshift back. Because, sure, why not? So part of Tina's plotline is she meets this guy who is like, I totally know who Credence is, come with me. And she's like, okay. And she gets captured because she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no man in a Hollywood movie, which means there's a ticking clock above her head at all times until the next time she is captured. Also, she hates Newt because of a misprint in a newspaper that said Newt was getting married to Lita. Seriously, throughout the entire 3 months, despite Tina working at the Ministry of Magic with Newt's brother, Theseus, who is engaged to the woman that Tina thinks Newt is engaged to. This apparently never came up, and nobody ever wrote a letter to each other, or stuck their head in flue powder, or one of the million other ways you can communicate long distance in Harry Potter. And that's not even the dumbest, most telenovela soap opera nonsense in the movie. Because near the end of the movie, right, everything culminates in the Lestrange family crypt. And the guy that captured Tina, who is a black guy, he's like, you see, actually, my mother was captured by so-and-so Lestrange under the Imperious Curse, and no one did anything about this for some reason, and was forced to give birth to Lita Lestrange, who is also black, because somehow they had to figure out how to have black Lestranges and keep, genetics working. Because I'm sorry, you can be as progressive as you want, but two black people are probably not going to have a white Bellatrix Lestrange at any given point in time. Yeah, the captured mother gave birth to Lita Lestrange, and then the other guy's dad went crazy and was like, we're going to make an unbreakable vow. You got to kill Clarence. Because the guy's mom died, and then the Lestrange dad moved on. It got another woman, and then they gave birth to Clarence. And the guy who captured Tina agrees to this for no conceivable reason. I don't get it. So that's his motivation throughout the whole movie, is I made an unbreakable vow with my crazy dying dad. Sure, why not? And then Lita is like, no, you see, I have his actual backstory. And she reveals that Lita, Credence, and their half-elf nanny were on a boat to America, and the boat sank. And during the confusion, Lita swapped 2 babies. I'm not joking, they swapped babies with some random family that happened to be on the boat. And so Credence drowned in the ocean. Or the actual Lestrange died in the ocean. And Credence is just some random asshole. And meanwhile, Newt, our nominal 1 character, is like, cool. And then Jacob's like, hey, guys, the rest of the plot's down here in this crypt. And then we find Grindelwald's secret white nationalist wizard Nazi clan rally, where Johnny Depp gets to give a big old fancy speech about how World War II is going to happen. They find Queenie, and she's like, hey, by the way, I like Grindelwald now. So, Jacob, why don't we join him so that we can get married? And Jacob's like, no, he's a nutjob. And she's like, well, fine, piss off. And she joins him anyway. That's how that happens. Queenie turns evil. Despite having 10 minutes of screen time in the whole movie. You just watch her turn evil. And that's about it. But then the Aurors come in to arrest Grindelwald, and they're like, hey, by the way, don't cause a commotion. It's not illegal to listen to them. And they're like, gotcha, boss. And they come in, and Grindelwald's like, well, hey, the Aurors are here. All right, I guess it's time for the finale. And he makes this whole thing about how the Aurors are totally evil, and they're going to mess everyone up. And then there's this one ginger woman. She shows up earlier in the movie. They don't name her, but I would put $5 on her last name being Weasley, because everyone has to be related to everyone else in a prequel. You can't have new families. The universe has to be very small, because as we know from history, important things only happened to 30 people and their direct descendants. But anyway, she tries to fight the Aurors, and the Auror immediately murders her. Just cold blood. Like Hermione stops Neville cold in his tracks in her first year. She is 11, and she manages to stop Neville just cold. And none of the professionally trained Aurors can do this, apparently. Their first reaction is, just kill him. It's like they're American cops, but these guys are supposed to be British. So then everyone in the crowd pisses off, and they have a big dumb, not really a fight scene. Grindelwald summons some blue fire, and it's like, all right, well, anyone who's my friend can walk on through. And then Queenie walks through, and she's like, don't worry, Jacob, we'll get married later. And Jacob's like, are you a fucking nutjob? And I was just like, yes, she is. Did you not watch the beginning of the movie? How are you okay with being drugged for 3 months? Jacob, what the fuck? And then Credence goes into the blue flame, and he's like, I want to find out who I am. And Nagini is like, I'm not doing that. And it's her only actual independent choice in the movie. Good job, Rowling. Must be very proud. And then they have a big old fight where a bunch of Aurors that we don't care about, I think they might have been in earlier in the movie? I can't remember. They're all so interchangeable. A bunch of them died in the blue fire. And it looks like Lita is about to join Grindelwald, but then she's like, psych! And Grindelwald's like, do you think I'm stupid? And like knocks her wand out. And she turns to the Super Scamander brothers and is like, I love you. And then dies. Her entire backstory to this point, like, we spent so much time with Lita, and it's all entirely pointless. It's like, who did she love? Who cares? She's dead. It's like, is this going to be a big fight between the Super Scamander brothers? Oh. And then it turns into like a giant dragon. And, oh shit, I forgot about Nicholas Flamel. So Dumbledore has like some safe house, and he's like, hey, Newt, go to the safe house in Paris. And he's like, I don't want to fucking go to Paris. And he's like, all right. And then he gives him the card anyway, because Dumbledore. And it's like Nicholas Flamel's house, because why not? And he's got the Sorcerer's Stone just in a wall in his house, like behind a painting. It's really dumb. And then he's there at the crypt, and they're like, we gotta stop this giant blue fire dragon, or else it's going to destroy all of Paris. Because that's what Grindelwald wanted? Wait, no, it's not. That doesn't make any sense. But whatever. And so they stop it, and then they go to Dumbledore. And Grindelwald had this little charm with him, right? We saw it early in the movie. It's made by Dumbledore and Grindelwald. Like, they cut their hands, and they, like, hold hands, they do the whole interlocking fingers thing, and this thing comes out, it's like a magical charm, and it's like, I'm watching it, I'm going, oh, okay, it's like a wizard wedding ring. That's kind of cool. And they show it to him, and Newt's like, what is this? And Dumbledore's like, oh, yeah, you found that. How'd you get that off them? And Newt's like, aha, the minion from the first movie. The little platypus thing. And he's like, oh, all right, cool. And Newt's like, so what is it? And the movie pussies out. They do a cop-out. The reason why Dumbledore can't fight Grindelwald, it's not an emotional reason. It's not because he still loves Grindelwald or anything. No. It's because of magic bullshit. The little charm thing is like, hey, by the way, you can't fight each other for vague, unexplained reasons. They were super close, closer than brothers. They were super mega hetero, no homo friends. Yeah, just dude bro friends. Because the movie has to sell in China, and they can't have gay people in China. Or some old executive was like, I don't want no queers in my picture. Which, I don't know, it could be a mixture of both. But that's not even the end of the movie. Because there's one extra scene. In a castle in Austria, it's Grindelwald, Queenie, and Credence. I know I called him Clarence once or twice. I really don't care about his name. But Credence has like this little chick with him. Just a little bird. He found it somewhere in Paris, and he took it with him into the crypt, I guess. I don't know. It's not clear. And Grindelwald's like, hey, Credence, you want some more lineage bullshit story? And Credence is like, dude, you know it, bro. That's why we made this movie, was to explain my lineage, even though I'm barely in the movie. And so Grindelwald tells him his actual last name. Well, actually, just his actual full name, because this is the thing Grindelwald knows off the cuff. Because plot. Credence's actual name is Aurelius Dumbledore. He is Albus Dumbledore's brother, despite the fact that he's like 40 years younger, and despite the fact that their father should have been in Azkaban prison at the time. To which some fans are like, oh, well, Grindelwald's lying. But I don't think he is. I think Rowling just forgot her own lore. Because they have Minerva McGonagall as a background teacher yelling at students, but it's like, she's teaching 10 years before she was born, Rowling, and you've written yourself into a corner. You want this character, but you said she can't be there, and it can't be a relative, so I guess we're just screwed. And Grindelwald takes that little chick and reveals it's a phoenix, because there's a full prophecy about Dumbledores and phoenixes. Because, like I said, nothing in the original movies can't be explained to death. Why did Dumbledore have a phoenix in Chamber of Secrets? Is it because he went to the magical pet shop? No. Is it because he's good friends with a guy who happens to know how to get rare and powerful magical creatures? No, because that would be, I don't know, easy. No, there's like a whole convoluted prophecy about Dumbledores and phoenixes, which proves that Credence is a Dumbledore. It does open up other questions, though. Like the baby on the boat. The original Lestrange drowned, but there was another... The Dumbledores were on the boat! There were Dumbledores on that boat. Like, Credence's mother. And she was on the boat. And they just killed her, and no one cares to explain this. It's so weird. Throughout the movie, they kept talking about some prophetic poem some guy wrote that was supposed to describe Credence, but here's the trick. They didn't tell us the poem until the last half hour of the movie, when it was too late, and we had already seen the movie. Like, someone would be like, are you familiar with this poem? And everyone else would be like, yes, we are. And they would just not say it. It's like, guys, I didn't memorize Pottermore. Fill me in. Help me, please. This movie already has too much exposition and lore dumps. You might as well just chuck it in there. At least chuck in enough to make the story you're telling make some goddamn sense. Overall, this movie falls into what I call 3 movie traps, right? We got the prequel movie trap, where every name and setting and prop has to be explained away, because nothing can be just, not even mundane, nothing can just be left ambiguous in a prequel. Everything has to be explained to death, and you have your lore as plot. But it's like, guys, I'm not watching this movie to figure out the backstory of Harry's textbook author. I want to watch a movie, guys. I'm sorry. And also, everyone does the dumb thing where they say their last names really slowly. It's like, my name is Michael J. Caboose. It's like, oh, well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Caboose. And it's like, oh, I recognize that last name. I watched the other movie. I'm so smart. It falls into the middle movie trap, where it's not allowed to have a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's just middle. It's just middle and middle and middle, because they have to set up the next movie. They're just selling the next movie. It's Pirates 2 all over again. And yes, you can have a movie be in the middle of a series and not have it be the middle movie. Like Goblet of Fire has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not paying off plot points from Prisoner of Azkaban and setting up plot points for, like, Deathly Hallows. It's not doing that. And I know there's like 3 movies in between, but it's just an ad for the next 3 Fantastic Beasts movies, which are probably going to have even less CGI monsters in them. But it's also, despite technically being an original work, it's in the adaptation trap, where the filmmakers think they can just kind of not explain things and not introduce things because their audience is already familiar enough with the source material to make up for shoddy writing. Okay, so if you remember in Sorcerer's Stone, Hagrid sits down with Harry and goes, Harry, look, there's some bad wizards out there, Harry. One of them is Voldemort. And he killed your parents. And he's a bad guy, and he's got bad followers, and he might be coming for you. But he might not. And Hagrid sits there and explains who Voldemort is, why Harry should care, and sets up the villain for the rest of the franchise. But they don't do this with Grindelwald. Not even the first movie. They don't tell you who Grindelwald is, or why he's a bad guy. They just kind of act like he's a bad guy, like you should already know. Like they're writing Half-Blood Prince. And it's like, oh, well, we don't have to explain who Voldemort is. Everyone already knows. It's like, but we don't know who Grindelwald is. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the movie. Thanks for listening to me ramble about it for half an hour. This is really the first movie review I've ever done on YouTube. If you guys are interested in stuff like this, I will absolutely make more. I'll go see movies. I don't give a shit. I'll just watch old movies. I'll find some crap and I'll just talk about it. Like Transformers the movie. Like the one from the 80s. That movie's awesome. It's dumb as awesome. It's got Eric Idle in it. Repeating like infomercial phrases, and Weird Al is on the soundtrack. That movie's nuts. But yeah, this gets a 1 on the Colossianometer. Whatever the hell that means.